Well, Rob Cashell, it's great to see you. It hasn't been too long, I guess, but it's been about a year and a half or so since I last ran into you at the great celebration of 40 years for the Butte High Bulldogs state championship team.
Yeah, Billy, great to see you too. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Of course, you're somebody I've known. I've known you so long that I don't remember not knowing you. And I remember when you guys won the state title in '84, I thought it was pretty cool because, hey, I know that guy. And not only that, he knows me. And he's played for the state championship Bulldogs. Although the first game I watched that year, though, I was cheering against your team because my parents had me, they had me fooled and brainwashed into being a Maroon, I guess, at that time.
Yeah, you were decked out in all maroon, I'm sure of it. But hey, you got to vote and root for Butte teams, right?
Yeah. Well, that was a cool thing about it. I think, I remember the '81 football game, which I'm sure you were probably at that when Central and Butte went to overtime and Larry Peterson had the interception in the end zone to preserve the victory. But a week later, I was cheering and my heart was broken cheering for the Maroons. But a week later, I was cheering just as hard for Donnie Douglas and the Bulldogs to beat Anaconda, so that's kind of how I always operated.
Yeah, and that was the great thing about Butte then and even now is anytime Butte High and Butte Central were going at it, you certainly had a divided town, if you will,
Yeah.
but Butte was always rooting for the Maroons or the Bulldogs when they were playing somebody else. So uh, great community, great sport town, and just had as you know, a great time growing up there at that time.
Yeah. And like me, you were a Muni kid, you and your brother Dave. I don't know if your other brothers golfed at all or not, but I just remember you and Dave out there.
Yeah, mostly it was Dave and I, and we grew up on Sanders Street down there after we moved from East
Yeah.
Butte. Grew up on Sanders, and so it was a short walk down past Longfellow School, and we would jump the fence at the Muni on hole number three at the tee box there, and
Oh yeah.
make our way over to the clubhouse. And at the time, I remember a junior membership. I remember this vividly because probably like my we had seven kids in the family, and not a lot of money, but my folks always made sure Dave and I had memberships, summer memberships to the
Yeah.
Muni. So we would go down there, jump the fence on number three, walk over to the clubhouse, put our sack lunches in the fridge, and golf all day long.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. You'd think I'd be a better golfer after a while. Dave was the good golfer, and I was the
Yeah.
kid down there, just smacking it around.
Yeah, that must have been a lot of pressure being Dave's brother because he got I was just reading he got third place at state as a senior. And it was kind of funny. His name wasn't in the newspaper story. It was just in the results. Third place, and they just mentioned the top two. I was reading that.
Yeah, he took to the game really naturally, and was a great golfer. Worked at it
Yeah.
really hard, and I'm a lefty, so I play left-handed, and wasn't always easy to learn the game back
Yeah.
then as a lefty, and but I didn't have the work ethic like he did to be out there and practice and practice and practice. It was me and Pinky Lynch and Fuzzy Dolan and Leo Myers, and Rap Brothers, and we were out there smacking it around. Although Jerry and Mike are very, very good golfers, but yeah, I enjoyed playing. I never was very good at it, but certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah. And being a lefty back then, I don't think you see lefty golfers all the time. Like a lot of the good Butte High golfers of the last, 15, 20 years have been lefties. When we were kids, there wasn't a lot of options for lefties. I remember Jack Crowley used to say, well, you should be playing, it's better off to be playing right because you're playing opposite. And I said, well, wouldn't that mean I should be playing left then since I'm right-handed? But I think it came down to Jack didn't want to or couldn't get the left-handed clubs. He wanted to sell you right-handed clubs probably. But
Yeah.
that was it. You couldn't just go get clubs as easy for a lefty back then.
No, you couldn't. You couldn't find a lot of left-handed clubs, and I was fortunate. Jack did scrounge up a set for me, and so I played left-handed, and I tried a couple times right-handed. It just never came to me, and
Yeah.
but I'm pretty dominant left-handed, and but I had fun with it, and Jack tried to convert me a couple times, but I think he realized that it wasn't going to happen. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I did good. And then Danny Mulholland's dad, Tom Mulholland, who was
Yeah.
the pro over at the country club for a number of years, Danny lived right across the alley from us, and his dad actually gave me a number of left-handed clubs as
Oh,
well. So
really?
yeah, we were able to put them together and get a set. Yeah, Danny Mulholland was another one in that group that played all the time, and as you know, Danny's a
Yeah.
heck of a golfer too.
Yeah. Well, was he about a year behind you in
Yeah,
school?
Danny was a year behind me.
Yeah. And it's funny you just described the way you scrounge around for golf clubs. That's kind of how the Muni kids were. I mean, we always had hand-me-down stuff. We get something from somebody else, because the Muni was a big family. I was just going seeing some of the names of people, and looking through golf results from like the early '80s, and they were all like Squires, were like family to us. The Cashells, we all knew each other so well. But yeah, you would get hand-me-down clubs, and I don't think I've never had a brand new set of clubs. Even to this day, the clubs I don't use them. The clubs that I would use if I were to golf again were ones I bought secondhand from Ryan Johnson when I was in high school. The woods were new, but well, the driver's a hand-me-down from my brother, even still. So, but that's just the way things
Yeah,
were back
the
then.
Muni. Yeah, as you said, the Muni. I'm sure you remember family days, right?
Oh yeah,
Those were awesome days, and once a month on Sunday, I think it was
yeah,
family day, and there'd be a big potluck and scrambles and different games and stuff like that. But yeah, the Oglands, who lived right across the way there, and
yeah.
it was just a great childhood growing up at the Muni. We would play golf all day, stop, have lunch, play some cards, go out there again, and I just really thank my folks for again back then 25, $35 was not always easy to come by, and
Not at all.
we
Yeah.
always made sure that Dave and I had those summer memberships. Here's how dumb I am, Billy. I should have switched to right-handed because I could have got all of Davey's hand-me-downs, but yeah, I'm not very smart.
Yeah, I guess you probably never got those many hand-me-downs. You got just scrounged up in the garage some place clubs from some people because it
Yeah,
just
yeah, and
lefties weren't around.
I should have just played right-handed and got Dave's hand-me-downs because he would because he became so good at it. He would upgrade his clubs from time to time, and I know heck he probably has two or three sets still in the garage.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time since you've lived in Butte, but you still have clout in Butte because I remember when they were first building the Jack Crowley clubhouse out there, I recommended to some people that, hey, why you should name it after Jack Crowley. And they're like, no, we're not doing that again. We just had this fiasco over naming the Three Legend Stadium, which legends you left out in baseball and stuff. And it was a mess. They weren't doing it. You write a letter, say you should name that clubhouse after Jack Crowley. Next thing you know, we got the Jack Crowley clubhouse. So you have enough pull with I guess when you have commissioner, sign off Commissioner Rob Cashell, it sounds better than just a smart ass guy like me saying it.
Well, I tell you what, no controversy with Jack Crowley, right? He
Yeah.
he was and remains to this day the Highland View legend. So
Yeah.
that was easy, and we had a ton of support, as you know. I started reaching out to all of the people that I remembered that had something to do with the Muni.
Yeah.
All the people that golfed there that grew up around us, and the people that worked in the clubhouse. I had them sign on to the letter, and so it was a no-brainer. And thanks to JP and the city for recognizing
Yeah.
the value that Jack brought to the community and to the kids of Butte during his, I think,
29, I think it's 29.
28 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, until 96. At least that's what I wrote it in the newspaper at the time that it was 29 years. I might not have added it up all that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, what a great tribute to Jack and his family, and,
Yeah.
and well deserved because he had a big impact on a lot of people.
Yeah, and the amount of people who signed that letter, with you was just incredible. Well, Marla Rude, I know she was really big. She's not Rude anymore. I can't think what her starts with an R, Rats something or other.
Paxliff.
Ratzliff, yeah. She sounds like she's lived in Louisiana her entire life now because she's
I
got such
know.
a deep accent. She doesn't sound like a Butte kid anymore. But yeah, it was great seeing her be a part of it, and just so many people who I didn't even real. I think I realized Jack's impact on people was bigger than even what I thought, just by seeing the amount of people who came out to support that. And you were the guy who was spearheaded it all.
Well, it was an honor to do that for Jack and his family, and just really proud of our time out there, and again glad that JP and whoever with the city or county commissioners or whoever needed to finally sign off on
Yeah.
that. It sounded like it was unanimous right away, so that was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's a great thing, and that's why I like it. Someday, 30 years from now, some kid will sit and say, "Who was that Jack Crowley guy?" And then some old timer will be there, like you or me, and be able to tell them who he was. And I think that's important to remember that. But you said you grew up, you were in East Butte before you moved down to Sampson Street.
Yeah, we lived over on well, when first my first memory is over on I think Thornton Street, but then we moved over to what was Cherry Street, which was really at the base, kind of the base of Woodville Hill,
Yeah,
and went to first 3 years of school over at Harrison Elementary, which none of that is there anymore because the East Pit gobbled it all up,
yeah,
and so I remember distinctly moving over to Sanders, and my family, we were part of that migration when the Berkeley pit and everything was expanding, and I think my folks probably bought a house super cheap because the pit was selling them super cheap, and
yeah,
my folks bought some land off of Sanders Street there, and that's where we grew up for the most part, was over there on Sanders, but started out over on Cherry Street at the base of what was Woodville Hill, and I remember Dave and I joke about it all the time. I remember we would go and outside riding our bikes and playing and different things, and you're playing on the top of the slag hill, and you're riding your bike through kind of the tailings that are
yeah,
coming down the hill, and you know, but that's what we had. That was our backyard.
yeah. That's why I always figured I grew up across the street from a mine dump up in Centerville. We played on that, and every time I get a pain in my back, I'm wondering if this is if it's coming to cash in but we always going to go with it. It's either going to kill us or it's going to be the reason we live for till 105,
Yeah, exactly.
because it maybe it strengthened our immune systems with all that. I'm not
Well,
sure
and
how
then
that works.
when we were over on Sanders, then we started at Longfellow Elementary, and finished up. I remember fourth, fifth, and sixth over there before then going to East Junior High.
Yeah, and then you're at Butte High, of course. You didn't play football? I don't think, did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, because you were listed at 5'9" in the basketball stories,
That's
and
pretty generous.
yeah, because you probably weren't the. I don't know if you were the shortest guy in the team, but you certainly weren't the tallest guy on the team.
I think in one program, Billy, it might have been divisionals or something. It got misprinted at 6'9",
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and Paffer and those guys always give me a bad time because they're sitting up in the stands, and that's when we had Razzie, and Rasmussen was 6'7",
and which
and
was giant at the time.
at the time that was big,
Yeah,
right? And the guys are sitting up in the stands, and they're hearing some parents at the other team that were playing saying, "Oh my God, Butte High has two big guys. Where's the other big guy?" And little did they know it was just going to be 5'9" guy at the end of the bench that wasn't even gonna play. But that program still says 6'9".
yeah, yeah. I think seems like I found that going through something. I took a picture and sent it to you years ago. Thought that was pretty funny. Could you imagine how that team would be if you really were 6'9" though,
Oh man,
playing
yeah.
next to Rasmussen? But that was a good team though, and Pat Foley, I've talked to him a lot about it. I don't think he expected to win a championship that year. He didn't expect to beat Central. I don't think because Central had a size advantage when you guys went into that game because they had 6'5" coming off the bench. You know, So he was worried about that. But that team, it just kind of had moxie, didn't it? It just there's something special about that group.
Well, I think it goes to show you, and you see it time and time again in sport, that not always the most talented team
Yeah,
wins the championship, right? And we weren't the most talented, but there was something special about that group of guys, and it was from every day at practice to the game to after the game. There was just something really special about that group buying into a collective goal, and we weren't the most talented. We had great players.
yeah,
Rasmussen was all world. Mickey Tuttle was probably the X factor, I would say.
yeah.
He brought a confidence to the team that
And he's
that
definitely got a swagger to this day, doesn't he?
yeah, and I think that swagger and that confidence rubbed off. You had Paffer, great athlete, Stevie Lester, Tom Hemmer, Mike Ogren, who just they were just workers down in the paint,
Yeah,
and but again, it just goes to show you that not always is the most talented team gonna win. Because if you look at those teams that we defeated in the state tournament, heck, you could make a claim that all three of them were more talented. But just something about that team brought it all together.
yeah. And a lot of those guys, they were known for being better at other sports than basketball. Like with Steve Lester, of course, I think anything he touched, he was going to be, all world. He's drafted by the Phillies. He had a two handicap golf, and he could do anything. And Mickey and Mickey was. I don't remember how good of a football player he was, but Paffer was a great football player. And Rasmussen was probably the only basketball first guy on that team. Or am I wrong? Maybe Hemmert. I don't know. Hemmert was a great all around athlete
Yeah,
as well.
Tommy played football, and Ogren played football, and
Yeah.
Hickey was going to play football. I think he had a shoulder injury or something early in the fall that prohibited him from playing football. But yeah, I would say Razzie was the one that concentrated mostly on basketball. Chance Youngkin, unbelievable shooter, great
Yeah.
basketball player. You mentioned Steve Lester, who I've maintained that he may be. I got to think Steve Lester is one of the best all-around athlete
Yeah, for sure.
that has come out of Butte High ever. I don't think he's gotten the accolades and the recognition, but I mean, incredible athlete. Like you said, anything he touched, a lot like Paffer. Paffer was like that. Anything Paffer did athletically, he just excelled at, and that's how Stevie was.
Yeah. Yeah, he was so good. And that was the cool thing about that year is Steve's mom was my teacher up at uh up at the Kennedy, and I wrote a column about her. She just passed away this past spring. Betty was such a tremendous person. Uh but she would tease the heck out of me, and I had some maroons socks that I was wearing, and she would tease me about them, and I was just I even though I was 4 Central in that game, I couldn't wait to go to school the next morning, which was very rare for me to ever want to go to school. But I couldn't wait to go to school because I knew she was just gonna just tease the heck out of me, and she was so funny about it because her whole room was purple and white that week. That was a lot
Yeah,
of
what a
fun.
great lady. I was sorry to hear that she had passed away, but yeah, unbelievable family.
Yeah, and of course she was my all-time favorite teacher, and one of my all-time college favorite professors was Tom Lester, who was it was like having a stand-up comedian in class when you went to sociology class at Montana Tech. Yeah, just a great family. But and then you got that team was full of characters, which Paffer let me go. I think Mickey told him that he wanted me to go there, so Paffer let me go to that meeting because Paffer, it was kind of like he is with the Silver Bees and stuff. It's like the He-Man Woman Haters. It's an exclusive club, so I was just honored to be there and he invited Bruce Saylor because Bruce covered a lot of those games to be at that event. It was pretty cool, but to see the collection of characters and talk to some of the guys, I think I talked to everybody except I think Ogren was the only one who couldn't make it, and he had good reason. His kids were playing in a tournament or something somewhere. But it's just a good group of characters. You got Youngkin's a great storyteller. He could tell everything, and just different guys. I think was it Youngkin who did the impersonation of Dan Lean, saying "Jesus Christ, get the ball to Rasmus,"
It could have been, yeah.
which of course I think everybody probably had a Dan Lean impersonation on that team, though.
Yeah, Coach Lean was what a great guy he was, and what a tragedy on how he
Yeah,
passed away. But Yeah, that, similar to the team, Billy, the coaches all bought in and they all knew their
Yeah.
role. And, Coach Foley, and then we had Coach Osborne and Coach Dennehy and Coach Lean and Coach Carl, who was actually doing, I believe Mike was doing his student teaching at the time.
Yeah.
And just everybody bought into what they were supposed to do. Chance and I were seniors that year, and at least for me, I knew that practice was the highlight of my week, man.
Yeah.
I knew that I probably wasn't going to get in many games, and if I did get in, things might be going south for us as a team, either foul trouble or somebody not
Yeah.
playing well. Uh, so you probably didn't want to see me in there because that meant either Paffer was in foul trouble or Tuttle was or somebody. But
Yep.
but for me, practice was, that's where I lived. I loved practice because I knew I was going to get to practice every day, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so we just loved it. So those of us I can't remember if we were the white team or the purple team, but basically the practice team, right?
Yeah.
But that was me and Chance. And then we had those young guys. We had Bart and Henry and Fergie, and we would just try to go toe to toe with that starting five every day in practice. So, but we knew our role.
Yeah.
And those young guys, man, what careers they had after, when they came up through and great players that they were. But we loved practice and we loved defense. Coach Foley really emphasized to our group defense, and
Yeah.
I think that was a big part of our run as well, as we were willing to, get in there and get dirty, and Hemmert and Ogren, they loved rebounding, and they loved the defensive end of it, and that's huge when you're trying to win games.
Yeah. So you must have went up every day practice against Mickey and Paffer then at guard.
Yeah, I did. Every day, it was me and Bart and Henry and Steve Lester kind of floated back and forth, but
Yeah.
he would be the first sub in for either Paffer or Mickey or something like that. And so yeah, every day I'm guarding Tuttle or Paffer or Stevie, and trying to make it as hard on them as possible because even though I knew I probably wasn't going to play a whole lot, I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I had to go out every day and try to prove myself at practice, and you'd like to think over all these years that maybe that helped those guys a little bit, but they were so good, and we had great practices. I can tell you that at the Civic Center we had practices sometimes that were every bit as good as any game you'd see.
Yeah, and being part of that team must be something special. I remember a few years ago when my son, he's playing football for Butte High now, and he's doing really good playing defensive line. He's in great shape, but he went through some medical issues from his asthma, and he wasn't in good shape. And he told me he didn't want to play football. And this was in junior high, and I told him, well, you should just think about it because there's a lot of great athletes, and you never know, they could be a good team. And what if it's a state championship team? He said, if you're the third string center on a state championship team for the rest of your life, you'll be a state champion. And that's got to be a pretty good feeling. I know you guys stay tight. There's a text message chain. I know you guys talk on, especially on St. Patrick's Day when you celebrate the anniversary every year. But that's just got to be cool to be a part of a state champion for all those years. I mean, for the rest of your life, you're state champion Rob Cashell. That's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to have been part of that, and you're right. I mean, every member of a team plays a valuable role, and
Yeah.
that translates to business. It translates to anything that you're doing. You're not always the starter. You're not always the star. You're not always the one getting accolades. But those are important parts, and knowing your role athletically. And I've spent a career now in intercollegiate athletics, and you see that time and time again, where it's the collective whole that accomplishes something, and it's not always just a singular person. Well, it never is a singular person
Yeah.
in a team sport activity. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's great to be a state champ. We'd love to see another team win it. Every year right around state time when the Bulldogs make it, we're all communicating and talking to each other and wishing the best for that team. Uh, and it's hard to believe with all of the great teams that have gone through that no one's been able to kind of put it all together and win it. But we sure are hoping for that someday.
Yeah, and I know Mickey's even more hoping for it than ever now with his grandson playing, which and he reminds me a lot of Mickey because he's got that swagger too. Even in football, even when the team's losing and he catches, you just tell he's got that total confidence going in that young man.
Yeah, what an athlete Hudson is, and very similar. He can do it all. It seems like he's a great football player, great basketball player. I don't know if he does track and field.
No,
If he
he
does, he
doesn't know.
probably should.
Yeah, he's on pace to be a four-time All-State player in basketball and football, which is
Wow.
just crazy because you remember how rare it was for a sophomore to even play varsity in football or basketball at Butte High back in the day. It's now to have a freshman All-State. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's certainly different different mentality on when kids are ready to play and all that. But you're right. When we were going through, heck, there's no way a freshman would play or sophomore. You'd be on the soft team or the JV team, but hey, congrats to those that can do it, and I hope they can win it this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you guys celebrated that championship. Pat Foley was telling me one time how he gave Tuttle some money to get people food, and then he thought, what a dumb thing he just gave Mickey Tuttle. I'm sure it didn't go to food when Mickey got the money. But yeah, I think you guys had it. You were on the golf course, were you staying by the golf course that night? You guys won it because they wouldn't let you go back to Butte because it was St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, we win the game and we're all excited to get back home and St. Patty's Day in Butte and I can't remember who came in if it was Mr. Peters, the principal at the time or Dean of Men, whatever his title was, but
Yeah.
somebody said, "Hey, you're not going back to Butte." So Coach Foley gave somehow Tuttle got the meal money,
Yeah.
and yeah, it never went to meals. I can tell you that. And yeah, we all ended up over some golf course and we drank our dinner that night. Let's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, yeah. Coach told me that it was one of those moves that he knew was probably a bad idea at the time, and he still went through giving Mickey the money. Probably should have. I don't know if probably go to get Paffer. Paffer would have made sure that everybody had something to eat and something to drink if they had gave it
yeah,
to him as
yeah.
organized as
Papa
Paffer
probably
was.
would have made sure we got fed anyway.
Yeah. Now, and I looked up. You said you weren't that good of a golfer, but I found some pretty good scores that you had. And here's what I found. I was looking through the '84 team, and I think you won the first tournament. You shot like a 77.
Oh man, I don't even remember. Yeah.
Really? But the story that I found, though, you're probably gonna be mad at me for bringing this up, but I found a story that said Rob Cashell is no longer with the team due to disciplinary reasons. And I just remember thinking, I'll bet you Tuttle had something to do with those disciplinary reasons.
No, I'm not going to pin anything on Mickey, but I'll own my own mistakes back then. But yeah, our celebration of the championship just kind of bled over. Uh, and Coach Yo, to his credit, he had team standards, and he said, "Hey, this is what we stand for, and this is what we're doing." And I didn't live up to those standards, so credit to him for sticking to what he knew was right, and
Yeah.
that stuff happens, and that happened, and but yeah, I'm hopefully better for it. Learned from it.
What a great guy, Ed Yo. He's one of him and his wife Bonnie were my favorite. That was the thing, I wasn't sure if transferring over from Butte Central to Butte High was the right thing to do when I went my junior year. And then I went to my first golf tournament on the road with the Yo's, and I'm like, that was definitely the right thing to do. Being able to play golf for Ed and make those trips and the friendships I had with those guys and teammates, that was great. But yeah, Ed Yo, what a stand-up guy he always was.
Oh man, great guy. I'm sure you remember his blue van that we would
Oh
drive
yeah.
to tournaments and stuff like that. And as you know, Billy, doing this as long as you have, these coaches they might make a couple $1,000 stipend or something like that to do this.
Yeah.
But if you think about the time and the hours and the effort they put into coaching, it's unbelievable. And the impact that they have on young men and young women is undeniable. So, credit to all of those folks that have coached at the high school level and been away from their families on
Yeah.
the weekends and at nights and practices and games and all of that. But yeah, Coach Yo, wonderful person and yeah, a lot of fond memories of going to tournaments. And, back then we had to play in the spring.
Yeah.
I remember a couple tournaments in Deer Lodge in particular, snow blowing sideways, and it might not even have been above 40, and you're just out there freezing your tail off and trying to golf in March.
Yeah. They're a little more serious about it now too, it seems like, because when we played in the spring, it was kind of like we all had summeritis. We're ready. Nobody, I don't think anyone was ever too serious. There's obviously Dave, I'm sure, was serious about golf when he was playing out there all the time. But we cared more about having fun. Now these kids play in the fall and their parents are following them around. It just seems like it's such a intense tournament all the time. I think we had more fun, at least, even though it was colder for us.
Well, and it's changed so much, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people specialize a lot now, and they have for a number of years. But when we were growing up, you'd play a sport, maybe take a break for a couple weeks, move on to the next sport, take a break for a couple weeks, move on to the next. Now it's nonstop, and a lot of people specialize,
Yeah.
we're seeing that at the college level. We're seeing burnout a lot earlier than ever before. We're seeing an increase in injuries because of this nonstop play. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, it's a great space to be in, and being a college athlete or a high school athlete is awesome. But I do think that there's some balance that we need to pull back to.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because we always had time off between and then we had summers back then. I remember Don Peoples when he first got the job. I was going to be a freshman and I saw him at a Copper Kings game. I told him congratulations for getting the job at Butte Central. And he says, "Are you coming to our football camp next week?" And I thought he was joking. I laughed at him. I'm like, "You want me to pay $30 for you guys to go yell at me for a week when I could be on the golf course? No, thanks." But now that's what it is. If kids, even kids who play baseball, sometimes the coaches get mad at them for missing football camps or basketball camps or practices or stuff. It's so hard. So these kids are, even if they don't play a summer sport, they're working so hard in the summer. They don't get any time off.
Yeah, and I do think that there's a balance to be had there somewhere. We've gone so far, the pendulum has swung so far that in my opinion, needs to come back a little bit
Yeah.
and give young men and women some time off. Not only physically but mentally as well, to just kind of reset and do some other things. But we'll see if the pendulum ever swings back to that or not.
Yeah. It might be a while before it does, if so. But so when you graduated from Butte High, you graduated in '84. And then did you go to Western right away? Is that where you went?
My first year I spent out in Glendive at Dawson Community College.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and Rick Rolling, my buddy Rick, was headed out there to Dawson, and so I decided we'd go out there, and so I spent a year there, got some generals taken care of, and then my next year I went down to Western after that because I was really drawn to possibly teaching and coaching because
Yeah.
I did have a great experience in high school athletics, playing basketball. I did track one year, I think as a freshman, did track and field, and then obviously golf, and just was really drawn to that whole environment. So I thought, well, I'm going to go and get my teaching degree and hopefully teach history and PE were my majors, and I thought I was going to be a history PE high school teacher and coach a little bit. But I never did end up doing that at the high school or junior high level.
Yeah. You got into because you weren't very old, maybe what 29, 30 years old, and you're suddenly the first full-time athletic director at Montana Western, which I think was it still Western Montana College then, or did they was it?
It was.
Yeah. So how did you fall into that to be in the AD down there?
Well, I got to step back a little bit and kind of explain how I ended up at Western at all. So I finished my degree, finished my student teaching, which I did up in Stanford, Montana. And the reason I was up in Stanford is Jerry Hogan. You remember Jerry?
Oh yeah.
Uh, Jerry Hogan was teaching up in Stanford, and Jerry and I were good buddies. And when you're in teacher's education and you're going out to student teach, you have to kind of put in your top three choices, right?
Yeah.
And everybody who was graduate or everybody who was from Butte who was graduating or student teaching, they all put Butte as their number one. Well, they're not going to place everybody in Butte.
Yeah.
So I put Stanford as my number one because I could go up there, I could live with Jerry, I could do my student teaching and help coach. So I did that, but I was done with my degree in December, and not very many teaching jobs open in December.
Yeah,
Right?
very few. Yeah.
Yeah. So another Butte connection, Michelle Rosa. Of the Rosa family that grew up on Gold Street there, and they were all Central kids, but Michelle Rosa was the director of admissions down at Western.
Huh.
And they had a staff member who had taken a promotion and moved into financial aid, and they needed an admissions counselor. So Michelle asked me, she said, "Hey, I got this hourly wage job. Don't know if it's going to go beyond June. I need an admissions counselor. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, heck yeah."
Yeah.
So that's how I got hired on at Western initially. Was I was an admissions counselor. So I would drive around the state of Montana and Idaho and a little bit into Nevada, and you would go into high schools and you had it prearranged where you would go in and kids would come and they'd ask you, you'd talk to them about coming to Western. So I did that for that spring term, and then they opened the job up permanently. I applied, I got it. So that's how I started in higher education, and I've been in higher ed now for going on 35 years. So then after getting in that admissions role, just started doing different things in higher education. The women's basketball coach at the time, Gary Cooper, All-American Hall of Famer at Western, he realized, hey, I got this guy over here. He's out talking to high school kids all the time. I can give him names of athletes and he can talk to them as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of became the women's basketball recruiter. So I would go out and I would go to the same schools that I'd always go to. And then if there was a basketball player that he wanted to talk to, I'd set up a meeting and talk to him about coming down to school at Western and playing basketball. And then he let me help him as an assistant coach. So that's how I got into the assistant coaching part. Did that for a few years, and then Casey Kelps, another Hall of Famer, Casey.
Oh yeah, the legend.
Legend in coaching. He asked me one year to come over and help him on the men's side. And during all of that, I had done some different things on campus at Western. I had done some work in residence life. I had started doing some work in the fundraising area, got named an assistant AD, was kind of running the facility, doing different things like that. And then Casey asked me to come help him for a year. And I got to tell you, Billy, he didn't ask me because of my X's and O's. He asked me because I was a great ops guy, right?
Yeah.
I could schedule the bus, I could get the hotels, I was the director of operations more so than an on-court coach.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah.
So Casey let me be around the men's program, and he had announced that he was retiring. And at the time, Gary Cooper had since retired, and the AD, a great guy by the name of Tom Yaris, he was the athletic director and he was also the director of the foundation. So he was doing two really big jobs at Western Montana College. Um, and they had hired another women's basketball coach after Coach Cooper resigned or retired, and so I get called in one day to Tom's office, and he says, hey Rob, Casey Kelp says you're ready. And I said, ready for what? And he said, well, we're not going to retain the women's basketball coach. So Casey said, you're ready. And so do you want to be the women's basketball coach, or do you want to be the athletic director? Because I can't do two jobs anymore. Well, it took me about 5 seconds, knowing where my strengths were. I said, hey, I'll be the AD. So that's how I got into the
Right.
job. So in 1996, I got named the first full-time athletic director at Western Montana College, and that's how it went down. Casey Kelps talked to Tom Yaris, and Tom Yaris said, what do you want to do? You want to coach basketball, or do you want to
Yeah.
be an AD?
So did you have to hire the basketball coaches then? Did you hire Kevin Engel and Mark Durham?
Well, great question, because all of this was happening kind of at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so those searches were already underway, except the women's basketball coach one, because Tom had said, "Hey, do you want to do that or not?" So
Yeah.
so Tom hired Mark and hired Kevin, and I was part of all of that. I was part of the interviews and all of that. Nobody knew I was going to be the AD yet.
Hmm.
Just Tom and I knew, and our president at the time. So Mark and Kevin get hired on, and then, within a few days, the announcement comes out that I'm the athletic director. So in a short period of time, you got me at 28 years old. I think Mark's I think a year older than me. So Mark was 29. Kevin might be a little bit younger than me. We might be the same age. So he's 28. And then Jenny Reynolds at the time,
Yeah.
uh, she was the volleyball coach, and she's a couple years younger than me. So all of a sudden, you got four people under 30 years old running the athletic department. And man, we didn't know what we didn't know, which was probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but we had a great time, and you know, obviously, Coach Durham, Mark, and Kevin did unbelievably great things there, and Jenny did a great job with the volleyball program, and you know, I'm sure glad I picked the AD route rather than the coaching route. You'd probably be talking to an old fired coach right now.
And it said Kevin, he had quite the run as the women's coach there too.
Oh
He was
man,
playing he was playing late in the national tournament year after year with that team.
oh, that guy, I tell you what, and Mark and Kevin played together, as you know,
Yeah.
for Casey Kelps, and the both of them are outstanding, but they couldn't be more different. They could
Oh,
not be more
they're
different.
night and day different. Yeah.
But they're best of friends, and they
Yeah.
couldn't be more different. And Kevin is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. He is so analytic, and he can break stuff down like nobody's business. And yeah, just we had a great time. We had an unbelievable run, and then I left in 2001 for Eastern Oregon.
Yeah. And that was a good move at the time. I was always I think I called actually. Will emailed you or lobbied you several times when the tech job was when they were going to hire an AD. Probably when they hired Joe, and then when Joe moved on. But yeah, because that was when you were AD. I think Bob Green was the AD slash football coach at Montana Tech. So there wasn't a lot of Western had to really change things a little bit under Durham. They tried to compete with Joe McClafferty and Bruce Parker and stuff. But in a lot of ways, Western kind of set the tone for having an AD. I mean, you guys were one of the first in the conference down there to have a full-time AD. That wasn't a thing that was done. And who would have thought Western would be one of the first?
Yeah, the old model of college athletics was typically that one of the head coaches also served as the AD. But
Yeah.
as administration became more important and fundraising and all of those things associated with being in a national organization and a conference started to change, you really needed to have a singular focus on that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Little old Western being maybe the first one to do it that way. But it was an awesome experience for us, and I still am in contact with Mark and Kevin and Jenny, and just love the friendships that we had and what we were able to do at Western.
Yeah. And of course that was a great school you go to. They we knew of Eastern Oregon because we played them in football before they joined the Frontier for football. That was a pretty common non-conference opponent for Montana Tech. Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name. Coach Green will know it right off the top of his head. He scored like in a 90-yard touchdown against Tech early in the game one time. I don't know if you were there yet or not. You may have been, but yeah,
Sure, yeah.
but it's a great school to step into, a great place to live. I'm assuming the weather is probably a little warmer than Butte.
Yeah, Grande is an unbelievable place. Heather and I, we raised our kids there. Hanna and Elizabeth were, I think, 2.5 and 1 when we left Dillon, and so we raised our kids in Grande, and a little lower elevation than Butte. So yeah, got all 4 seasons, but didn't quite get as cold as Butte. But yeah, we have fond memories of Eastern, and that was a unique place as well to step into because I actually was the first full-time AD there as well.
Oh, no kidding, huh?
Yeah, Peggy Anderson, who I replaced, she was also a full-time faculty member. So she taught full-time in the health and PE area as well as was the athletic director. So I was the first full-time AD for Eastern. And yeah, it was a unique opportunity because at the time I went there, they were dual affiliated, meaning that they were NCAA Division III and NAIA. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It was hard. Every decision you made, you had to open up 2 rule books and figure out
vastly different rules. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And then you had to follow what the rule was is you have to follow the most restrictive rule. So, eligibility or financial aid or whatever was the harder of the 2 rules is the one you had to follow.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult because we were competing for the most part in the Cascade Conference, of which I run now. But we had to follow completely different rules than everybody else in the league. So we were, long story short, is we were able to, in 2004, go to a single association, and we went the NAIA route. We were able to get our football team into the Frontier Conference, of which they are still members today.
Yeah.
And we were able to start offering athletic aid and follow the NAIA set of rules rather than Division III. And I think, those steps, and I credit our president at the time, Dr. Dixie Lund, and that transformed the athletic department of going to a single association.
Yeah. And then you what were you, about 12 years at that job?
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
11 and a half, 2001 to 2012.
Yeah. And then you take over. Were you the first full-time commissioner as well? Is that what you?
Second.
Oh, because I know because we had Swede Kinnison at the time. I think I called you then to when Swede passed away, say, hey, there's a job, but Swede, it wasn't even close to full time. I think they probably paid him about 12 hours a week, or he didn't make much money at all to be the commissioner then. And now, of course, it's a full time position. We've had several of them, of course. We've had some good commissioners, but in the Frontier, but it's a different it was just showed you how the landscape of college sports changed so much, and it came a long way. And then once you get the job, it changes even more and more because now if we got the NIL and all that other stuff, it's a whole new ball game for college sports, especially on the administrative side.
Well, very similar to how the athletic director position evolved into a full-time, the commissioner position did as well. Again, kind of the old model was either a retired AD or
Yeah.
a retired coach or somebody that you know, pay five, six, seven, $8,000 to a year and they'd run the conference, you know. Now it is a full-time job and has been for a number of years. And if you look around the NEIA, I don't think there's a single part-time commissioner job anymore. They're all full-time jobs. But I was the second full-time commissioner for the Cascade. A guy by the name of Dave Hagland was our first full-time commissioner, and he came on in 2007, and then he left in 2011. And I stepped in the interim role for half of a year, and the job opened up, and I threw my name in, and been doing it now 14 years.
Yeah, you like that job? It's probably a pretty rewarding job because not only well, every year you get to know the champion, right? I mean, when you were AD, Eastern Oregon had to win it. Now you get to stand on the floor with the Cascade champion every time they get a trophy.
Yeah, I joke that one of my teams is always going to win, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very rewarding. I think we have one of the strongest conferences in the nation at the NAIA level. Last year we won 6 team national championships. We had 14 individual champions in wrestling and track and field. Academically, our kids are really strong. We had, I think, over 700 academic All-Americans. Yeah, it's a great job. People often ask, well, what does a commissioner do? And sometimes it's hard to answer. But really what you are is you're kind of like a chief executive officer of an organization, right?
Yeah.
And my job is to make sure policy and procedures are in place and followed. We manage and oversee all of our championships. We have 16 championship sports that we operate and run. We oversee weekly award processes for not only our conference, but how we push everything forward nationally.
Yeah.
So yeah, not only do we now have full-time commissioners, I have a full-time director of communications because athletics has changed so much. And so you've always got to be creating content and pushing information out and over a number of different platforms.
Yeah, and probably in the newspaper coverage is probably I don't know what it's like in Oregon. I assume it's probably the same. It's not quite as extensive as it used to be. So a lot of times, like you see Montana Tech, even they got their communications director is pushing out their sports almost like they're reporting on them. That they're putting them out for the stories because it's just the way the newspapers. There's the days of Jim Edgar, Bruce Saylor, and Hudson Wilsey running the Montana Standard are over. So you can't rely on the newspapers as much. And of course, people go different places for their news too. So it's probably a constant struggle to get their school and in the conference in the limelight there for
Well,
people to
and
know where to
one thing
go.
that one thing, Billy, that was very different from my experience at Montana Western and certainly my experience in Grande at Eastern Oregon is in those instances, you're kind of the only show in town, right?
Yeah.
So there's a ton of focus on you. And back then, you would come down to a Western game or Jim Wood or Hudson or whatever. When I came out and took over as the commissioner, I've got schools in Metro Portland where there's 3 million people and the University of Portland and Portland State. I've got a school literally in the shadows of the University of Oregon.
Yeah.
Bushnell University in Eugene. We've got schools in Seattle metro area. So you just you're not going to get that focus that you're going to get in a Dillon or in a Grande or even in a Butte. So everything has changed so much over the years where our schools are really, as you said, they're pushing out their own content rather than relying on uh, really what has changed so much in the news industry and smaller staffs and maybe not even daily newspapers anymore and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, our schools have really had to invest in sports information directors, content creators, and relying on getting our story out ourselves.
Yeah, because I imagine like Westminster College, they could win a national title in basketball, and they probably wouldn't even make the local newspaper. Like Paul Panisco told me, he lived in Salt Lake for a while, and I think he was like several blocks from Westminster College, and he didn't even know it was there. You come to Butte, and you got those signs on the on the light posts about tech, leading your way to tech. There's Ordigger logos painted in the corner of right on the street on Montana and Park. It's you're coming to a college town, but so some of the schools, yeah, like, and if they, if it is a college town, it's not their college town necessarily.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as an example, again, you look at Bushnell University. They are right across the street from the University of Oregon. I think we all know, anybody in sports knows the power of U of O and their branding,
Yeah,
and Eugene is going to pay a lot of attention to U of O, as they should. They've done great
yeah.
things, but yeah, so we've had to be creative, as most NAI institutions have, to push our content and get the word out.
Yeah, and then of course how much it's changed. I had Coach Durham on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he's telling me what he does in his role for as the director of NIL for the men's basketball at MSU, and he sounds exactly like the bad guy in the movie Blue Chips, from back in the day, because everything he did would, you'd be kicked out of college sports for your rest of your life now, and it's all legal on the up and up, and it's just changed so much, and it's probably, a lot of people, a lot of old school people say, oh, I don't like it that way and stuff, but I think it's fair to the kids probably, to get paid at some point, but it's got to be such a pain for coaches and administrators to have to deal with that, because there's so many issues come with athletes being able to get paid to play college sports.
Well, and luckily, I say this luckily, at the NAIA level, we don't see it to that level that
Yeah.
you're seeing at Division One in terms of the direct payment to student athletes. But I will tell you, the NAIA actually approved name, image, and likeness before the NCAA did.
Yeah.
There's a ton of things that the NAIA has done that has been on the forefront of college athletics. The NAIA was the first to offer women's championships. The NAIA was the first to integrate. The NAIA was the first to NIL. The NAIA was the first that incorporated and really challenged schools to incorporate character-driven athletics back in
Yeah.
2000. So we've been on the forefront of a lot of these changes, but we're just not quite big enough to tell our story like the NCAA is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that comes out every year when the all conference awards come out. There's always the champion of character award, which for each team or for the conference. I think that's great to highlight that. And you see that at Montana Tech a lot, which is of course I'm most familiar with the Tech, but they really push that a lot. Matt Steppen does a tremendous job as the AD there. But yeah, the character is something that seems like it really counts a little bit more the lower level. Of course, I mean, there's obvious exceptions, different places, do it right and do it wrong everywhere. But that's kind of what makes me, I would rather go watch an NAIA football game than go watch a big time college football game, because I know I'm going to follow those kids for 3 or 4 years, the same players, so it's a
Yeah,
better deal for me.
it's changed a lot, and you either adapt to the changes or you get left behind, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of character mattering, as you know, last year Carroll College won the first ever NAIA School of Character Award,
Yeah.
and then just on Tuesday I was at Bushnell University. Bushnell won the second
Oh,
um,
nice.
NAIA School of Character Award, and it's all based upon how are you delivering that education and that opportunity for young men and women to grow in integrity and respect and responsibility and servant leadership. And really, one of the things that's important about that, and I'll go back to what you mentioned earlier about discipline and being removed from a team. Those things still happen.
Yeah.
And part of our job as educators is to help people walk through those mistakes and get to the other side of it and learn from it and move on. And sometimes character is developed in hardship, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And now I'm looking at your picture behind you. Is that a picture of Butte on the back of your wall there?
Yeah, it sure is. My
That,
sister-in-law Kathy, who's married to my brother Mike, who's been in Butte his entire life and a VP at Northwestern Energy. She actually sent me this framed about, I don't know, maybe about a year ago, maybe not quite that long.
yeah.
So it's an old Butte City, Montana, 1829 map.
Well, back when it was Butte City. Yeah.
Butte City, yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, I've got that's up in my office. So yeah, I'm certainly proud of being from Butte and matter of fact, have a neighbor that moved in few houses down from Montana out here doing a residency doctor, and he grew up in Kalispell, and we met on the sidewalk, and he had Montana license plates, so I stopped and said, oh, Flathead Valley, I knew because number 7,
Yeah.
when you're in Montana and anywhere outside of Montana, you just need to see the number.
Yeah, we know, right?
And you can hopefully figure out where somebody's from. And so from Flathead, and I said, oh, you Kalispell? And he said, yeah. And I saw my wife and I were from Montana. And he said, oh, where are you from? And I said, Butte. And he kind of gave me a look. And I said, hey, don't be giving me that look.
We all know that look.
Yeah, I said, you can't give me that look. I said, I understand it. You either love us or hate us, but I'm going to call you on that look a little bit. But he's a young guy, went to Glacier, which, when I was in school.
It wasn't around, yeah.
Yeah, but we had a nice visit, but yeah, sure proud of Butte and proud of the town. And I will say, kind of growing up in Butte really kind of shaped a lot of how you view winning and losing and striving to be the best at whatever you're doing, right? So I remember, Dylan had that a lot. Dylan has a great sport tradition, certainly the high school, Terry Thomas and, the Finbergs and all those people that coach down there, TJ Nelson. And so they have that winning attitude. When I went to Eastern Oregon, it wasn't that they didn't have a winning attitude, but I think that they thought you had to sacrifice something to be winners. I think a lot of times they felt like, well, you can't win if you're giving up character, and you can't win unless you give up academics. And I think that attitude of Butte and the city of champions, and you can win and be a good person and be good academically. They're not separated. You can do all of it. That really shaped kind of how I approached that job, and trying to say, hey, we don't have to sacrifice in these areas to be good on the field or in the court or on the track. You can have it all if you work at it. And I credit that to growing up in Butte, and kind of that attitude that we all grew up with was, hey, we're going to win. We're going to do everything we can to win. And we're going to try to do it the right way, and we can do it with class, but we're going to be proud about it too. And I really value that upbringing.
Yeah. Now, is this your home office? Do you get to work in a home office, or do you have to go into an office?
No, work remote, as they say, but work from home. And my assistant works from home. She lives in Bend, Oregon. So I travel to the schools, and we traveled all the championships and uh, engaged nationally. So we're in Kansas City quite often for national stuff because that's where the NAI is. But yeah, get to work from home.
Yeah. And how's the family doing? I know you had the two daughters. Unfortunately, it's been about what almost 9, 10 years now since you lost your daughter Hannah. Uh, how's the family doing, you guys? Because it seems like you're amazing how positive a person you are after going through something like that. In my book, because you've always been so. It seems like you're still Rob Cashell after all that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for mentioning the girls. And yeah, we're coming up on 10 years since losing Hannah. Just a really a tragic car accident. She was a freshman in college at Eastern,
Yeah.
uh, at Eastern Oregon, and yeah, I mean it's as you know, you've talked to a lot of people, and I think of people like Leo McCarthy
Yeah.
and Barb and Don Peoples who lost a daughter to illness, and if you open your eyes, there's grief all around you, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I always tell people is we still grieve to this day losing Hannah because it was just such a tragedy, and her life was cut short, and but we don't have the corner market on grief either.
Yeah.
Uh, if you look around and you have the ability to open your eyes, and there's people going through a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of loss going on. So we just try to open our hearts to that, and when you give of yourself, I think emotionally like that, and you give and you lay your heart out there, I think that comes back to you. Um, I love talking about our daughter. When you're my age, people ask you, hey, do you have kids or now grandkids?
Yeah.
And I've always been really open about, yeah, I've got two daughters. And I kind of leave it lay there, but then if people ask, kind of further questions, I'm honest with them. And I say, hey, we lost our oldest daughter in a car accident, and it's not to shock people,
Yeah.
and it's not to elicit, sympathy or anything like that. It's just our way and my way of um, keeping that alive, that spirit alive. That yeah, I'll always have two daughters. So thank you for asking about that, and again, we don't have the corner market on grief by any means, but we've had our fair share of it. And then Elizabeth, our youngest daughter, just got married a year ago,
Oh,
and
nice.
we have our first grandbaby.
Oh,
So
really? Congratulations.
yeah, so Heather and I are grandparents, and a little baby girl, and
What's her name?
her name is Suki Hanna.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's the
Yeah.
kind of stage in life we're in, and doing good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the grandparent life. They always talk about how good that is as a parent. When your kid's misbehaving, throwing a fit, you're stuck with that kid. When you're a grandparent and the kid's misbehaving, you just give them back, and you get the good times. You don't have to deal with the harsh times, right?
Yeah, a friend of mine, actually the AD at Oregon Tech right now, he just became a grandpa too, and then I don't know if you remember Billy Pilgrim. Billy
Oh
played.
yeah, for sure.
Well, Billy's the AD at Corbin
I did not know
University,
that. Oh,
and he and Candace just became grandparents, and so we're building a team right now.
yeah.
So we got Suki, my granddaughter, and John's granddaughter. Her name is Julianne. She goes by Juju. So we got that. There's the backcourt. And Candace and Bill have a granddaughter named Lennon. So
Yeah.
she's a small forward. So we need two more to have that starting five
Yeah.
in a few years. But anyway, John explained it. Somebody asked him at a meeting we were at, how's grandpa life, and I heard him say, "Oh man, I hit another gear. It's another level." And that was a great way to explain it because you really do. You get
Yeah,
another, it's a whole other level of love and a different gear that you go into.
that's all. That's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, so and I'm relentless. I text my daughter Elizabeth daily and say, I need a picture. I need a picture. So
Yeah. Are they,
Heather
how
says
close
I'm
are they?
relentless.
Do they live close by?
About 2 hours from us.
Okay. Well, that's not too bad, but
No,
far enough though. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, not too bad. We get down to them as often as we can, and whenever she says we can come,
Yeah.
we're in the car pretty immediately after that.
Yeah. 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 You can't, she probably doesn't want you there as much as you want to be there. Otherwise you just move right in, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to move in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Rob, I really appreciate your time and I appreciate what you do. I know you do things the right way. I've always wanted to bring you back to Butte for my selfish reasons so I could see you because I don't get to see you very often. And I know you would have done a great job as a frontier commissioner or tech AD or all that stuff. But seems like you're right where you should be. It seems like life's going pretty good for you guys down there in La Grande right now.
Yeah, things are great, and actually we're in Corvallis, Oregon.
Are you in Corvallis now, huh?
Yeah, Heather and I moved over here.
Okay.
Another kind of funny story is Elizabeth went to school over here at Oregon State, and her sophomore year we called her up and said, hey, can we come to school with you? 'Cause we were ready for a change, and so she said, yeah, come on over. So we moved over here to Corvallis in 2019.
Oh,
So
that's
we've been
awesome.
here. Yeah, so it's great to be. This is a great community. Oregon State University is here. My wife works for OSU, and yeah. So, but yeah, you've always anytime there's been an opening in Butte, you're one of the first guys I ever hear from.
Yeah, I always assume that everybody wants to come back to Butte, but it's not always. There's nice places out there, and can you see Mount St. Helens from your window? Can you look out and see Mount St. Helens or any of that? Are you that close?
Not Mount St. Helens, but we have a great view of Mount Jefferson.
Yeah,
Uh, so Mount Hood is up in Portland. We're about 80 miles south of Portland, and then Mount St. Helens is a little bit north of that. But the Cascade Range, which our conference is
yeah,
named after. So there's big mountains, volcano mountains, all the way down the stretch, and so right out our window we have a great view of Mount Jefferson.
yeah. I've always wanted to go out and see all those, the sisters, all the different volcanoes of the Cascade Range, because I've been infatuated with. It goes back to Family Day at the Muni. Is Family Day in May of 1980 was the day that Mount St. Helens erupted, and I remember Jack Crowley had a makeshift mask on. He used a garbage bag and I think coffee filters or something. He had a bag over his head before the ashes were even coming. He said, "Everybody's got to go home. Mount St. Helens blew up. You got to go home." So ever since then, I was just always when we played in the mud. I remember they building the end of the old clubhouse that they built the locker room on. I remember playing with the Murphy brothers, building mud piles, making Mount St. Helens and making it blow up. So I got to get out there to the Cascade Range one of these days, and
Yeah,
hopefully,
it's beautiful out here, and yeah, we've been out in Oregon now since 2001, so going on 25 years, and we love it. But uh, we're always Montana people at heart. We always tell people, they say, where are you from? And just instinctively, Heather and I both say, oh, well, we're from Montana, even though
yeah,
we've been in Oregon 25 years now.
yeah,
Uh, but my kids were born in Montana, but yeah, Oregon's been great to us, and you never know. Heather's folks are still in Dillon, and I've got family still in Butte. Mike and Pat and Dave are still in Butte. My brother Chuck is up in Helena. Brother Tom down in Billings. So a lot of connections remain in Montana, and we love it to this day. We're very proud to be Montanans.
that's great. Well, Rob, again, I appreciate your time, and yeah, it's congratulations on a great run that you've had down there in the Cascade and at Eastern Oregon and stuff. It's been fun talking to you over the years. You used to send me for Butte Sports. I had Cascade news all the time on the Butte on the ButteSports.com. Thanks to you said of that stuff. But Yeah, but it's been fun following your career, even though I couldn't get you to come back to Butte. It's still been fun seeing what you do.
Well, you never know. I still got some years to work, so you just never know. Never say never, right?
Exactly.